Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens are going to join up here to tell us racism in America is completely fake. Now, Candace Owens is one of those people that white conservative racists will share to their Facebook timeline to say, hey, look, when I say this, it's not racist because this black lady says the exact same thing. So there's no racism in America. Black people's problems are simply black people. That's what this conversation is going to say. It's the individual's issues, sagging your pants, black culture's the issue, listening to this hip-hop rap music is the issue. Just simply going to prison too much is the issue. There's no systemic issues in America. It's really boiled down to black people being lazy and stupid. That's what she is going to help white people reconcile here. She's going to make them feel completely fine with believing that because she is a woman of color, and she's going to reinforce those positions and validate them. So I'm going to go through this not entire, but it's around 1 hour long. I'll run it at 1.25 speed, but I'm going to go through it and talk about this amazing conversation with her and Benny Boy.
It's not good for us when you have a culture and music which glorifies baby mama. We have a culture problem in Black America. I think the best way to fix it is for everybody to stop debating about it, so everyone stop the hand-holding, and let Black Americans get to work.
We have a culture problem. All you gotta do is simply work hard. Stop listening to rap music with baby mama. Although by far, the largest consumption of rap music is in suburbs.
Democratic presidential nominees have received, on average, 90% of the vote from Black Americans for the last 6 decades. These candidates have run and continue to run on race-specific handout programs like affirmative action and now slavery reparations to supposedly save the Black community from racism embedded deep within American society. The work of improving Black lives has largely been stripped from Black Americans by liberal politicians and thought leaders telling Black Americans they're victims of America.
Now, Black Americans vote Democrat because they are far better than Republicans, but this is how neoliberal corporatism leads to fascism or right-wing populism, because they pretend to rep all of these issues. They pretend to care about solutions to all these issues, but they never actually fix it. So that's when the door opens for someone like Donald Trump to come in and say, you know what, whatever, stop trusting this system, because they don't actually ever solve anything. So that part is a tiny piece of correctness. But when you're talking about reparations and affirmative action, they have done very good things to even the playing field and heal some very minor parts of our systemic hardship we inflicted on Black Americans in this country.
That is what inspired Candace Owens into a political career. Candace had always thought she was a Democrat. That is, until the media's dishonesty during the 2016 election woke her up. Since coming out as conservative, she speaks on Black culture.
Since coming out as conservative, I'm sorry for pausing, but these are so many freaking buzz topics. Coming out as conservative, like it's a brave thing to do. I am coming out as conservative. The thing that's under attack in America right now is conservatism, being white and conservative. I do understand that being Black and conservative will come with some insults thrown your way and some hardships with that. But in general, I see white people doing this as well. Conservatives have this victim mentality that they claim the left has.
The victimhood promulgated within it, and a society weaponizing race for political power. In 2018, she founded Blexit, a movement encouraging Black and minority communities to jump ship from the Democratic Party. Candace, who finds herself frequently canceled on Twitter, recently posted a video criticizing the
canceled. She gets canceled. All the buzzwords.
Propping up of George Floyd as a hero. That video
No one propped up George Floyd as a hero. He was a martyr, not by choice. No one picked him as a hero. No one said he's a great guy. He's just a guy who the police saw was a Black man and they murdered. They knew nothing about his history. No one knew anything about his history. He's a Black man in the eyes of the police. They murdered him as a Black man, not as a criminal. As a person who they think forged a $20 bill. That's what matters. No one gives a shit what the history is of any of these people who are wrongly killed by the police. The fact is, they see Black person, they kill them way more than they'll kill a white person.
Viral.
And when they kill white people, that's also an issue, by the way. Our policing is broken all around, but it's worse for Black Americans.
Resulted in an onslaught of attacks. We'll get into that controversy here. We'll also discuss Candace's own traumatic experience of being treated as a victim by the NAACP and other organizations that hindered rather than helped her. What Cardi B's interviewing Joe Biden says about
That's that story I was talking about. I guess it was a payout of $40,000, not a millionaire.
The way Democrats see the Black vote, and a whole lot more.
But she did get a media career after those issues that propelled her to being a millionaire, so you can still tie it to that.
Hey, and welcome. This is the Ben Shapiro Show Sunday Special. Just a reminder, we will be doing some bonus questions at the end with Candace Owens. The only way to get access to that part of the conversation is to become a member. Go over to dailywire.com, become a member. You'll have access to all of the full conversations with every single one of our amazing guests. Candace Owens, thanks so much for joining the show.
Thanks for having me.
So first of all, everybody should go pick up a copy or pre-order a copy of Blackout, which comes out very shortly, sure to be an enormous bestseller. Congratulations on the book. Also, congratulations on, you told me this, I'm not giving anything away. You're pregnant.
Yes.
That is an amazing thing. That is a life-changing thing.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I'm excited. I mean, I'm really excited for that next chapter of my life. And I would say in terms of my political life, the stakes feel a bit higher in terms of where America is going to go.
So let's start with where America is right now. We're watching, as we speak, major riots in Kenosha, Wisconsin. We've seen major riots in Seattle. We've seen major riots in Portland, in LA, in Washington, D.C., in New York City, in Chicago. Virtually every major city, all Democratic governed, has broken into
All Democratic governed.
extraordinary levels of rioting and looting. The media have informed us that all of this is apparently a good thing, that this is changing America in a positive way. Barack Obama suggested at the DNC that the protesters are really doing something wonderful, and the media have conflated the protesters with the rioters and with the looters. So I want to get your overall opinion.
They did. A study just came out that 93% of all protests so far since the George Floyd killing, 93% have been completely peaceful. And even a couple bottles thrown took them out of that category. So only 7% of these protests were actually somewhat violent. We don't know what the data is on very violent.
Opinions, first of all, on the Black Lives Matter movement, because it seems to me that Black Lives Matter can mean three separate things, and there's been an attempt to conflate all of them. One, the inarguable proposition that black people matter. Second, the idea that Black Lives Matter as an organization is good, which seems crazy. And third, that America is systemically racist and evil. And I've yet to see exactly how the Black Lives Matter movement, which seems to stand for both the organization and the idea that America is evil, how is that making America better? Do you believe that what's going on right now in America and has been going on since the death of George Floyd has made America better in any way?
No, I mean, I think I've kind of made myself a staunch adversary of the Black Lives Matter movement. It is the antithesis of everything that I believe in as an American, first and foremost. And no, yeah, they're operating under the guise of something that's common sense. Black Lives Matter, and they're doing nothing to prove or to show that Black lives matter to them because they don't care about Black lives. We know that all across America, in major cities, Black crime rate has gone up, Black homicide rate has gone up. Black people are dying because of Black.
Oh my God, dude. You predict crime by things like poverty, by things like education funding, by things like housing funding, by things like healthcare funding. You don't predict crime by race. People act on their environments. The environments for Black Americans throughout all of American history have been screwed because of what America has done to Black people. So when we talk reparations, when we talk affirmative action, how do you fix environments? Well, you have to fix the systems in which the environments are fostered in. That's why we talk about fixing racist systems, because that will heal crime, because it'll change the environment people have to grow up in. It's a very simple concept. It's undisputed amongst anybody who wants to actually know what the core issues are, but she's going to lie about all of this.
Black Lives Matter activism, people burning down and looting Black neighborhoods, taking away Black jobs. So I hate everything to do with Black Lives Matter, and I have used my platform, my voice to speak out against what is...
Hate everything to do with Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is no centralized group. There's no Black Lives Matter headquarters. There is something that's very small, but Black Lives Matter, when anyone says it, when 99.9% of the population says it, is literally just a movement people adhere to, saying Black Lives matter because America treats them as if they don't, and we've done nothing to restore our racist history.
Ultimately a big lie, right? This is all built upon the idea that Black Americans are being done unarmed by a police officer. We're just peacefully, doing our business, and a police officer sees us and they come up to us and they want to shoot us and they want to kill us. And that's a lie. If you are genuinely concerned about Black lives, if I was going to be fearful in America, I would be more afraid of a Black person, a Black male, a Black perpetrator than I would be of a white person or a white police officer. Going by the statistics, we kill our own people way faster than any other person. I actually say this, and it's controversial. If you are truly, sincerely a white supremacist in America, the best thing you could do is do nothing and let Black America tend to itself, because what we do...
It's undisputed that Black people commit more crimes, but for the reasons I laid out, that will continue if we don't fix the environments they grow up in. And she's saying that white Americans should take a hands-off approach, I don't see color approach to racism, and say, oh, just tell Black people to work harder. That'll fix everything. But you can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps when you don't start off with boots. You don't heal generations of discrimination by removing oppression. You don't heal things by simply... You don't heal a stab wound by simply taking the knife out. The cut's already there. The cut is deep. The cut hasn't been healed. And all these problems we're complaining about, black on black crime, the black crime rate in general, all these things would be alleviated if we paid attention to our history and healed these generational slights.
Do to ourselves, right? When left unattended to ourselves is way worse when you look at the statistics than allowing any other group to come in and try to do anything to us, and that's including, of course, police officers who are not killing
What stats?
Black Americans for no reason.
So in a second, I want to ask you about the extent to which racism still shapes life in America, because it remains.
No one says they're killing black Americans for no reason. No one says they're apprehending black Americans for no reason other than the clear data that says black Americans are stopped at a much higher rate for not the same level of cause that's according to the amount that they're stopped. But the main issue people have in general with it, I know she's disregarding the data, but the main issue is in a situation like Jacob Blake, in a situation like George Floyd, these cops should be able to apprehend these people and get them under control pretty easily. Like, if you look at the Jacob Blake thing, the cop is pulling on his shirt with one arm as Jacob Blake calmly walks to his car. And the only option the cop thought he had was to shoot him 7 times in the back. It's shitty training. And we know that the racial tension and the racial profiling adds to that. And the racist systems adds to that. And we know that our policing is built upon oppressing people of color. Nixon admitted that when he started the war on drugs. Reagan propagated it even further.
This key issue in American politics, and the stats tend to be rather split on all of this. I'm going to get your answer on racism in America in 1 second. First, I have life insurance. I have life insurance because I am a responsible human.
Jesus. This is cringe.
Is that America is systemically racist. According to the 1619 Project, America was rooted in racism. America's a 400-year story of nothing.
It literally is rooted in racism. Like, that's such a stupid point.
But the foundations of racism being carried out in every aspect of American life. So how much do you think that racism is actually an obstacle to black...
And she's making so many white people happy with this. You're going to see clips of this all over Facebook. Hey, look, it's a good one. This good one is saying the truth. Racism isn't real.
Americans living today, not in 1960 when Jim Crow, not in 1860 when slavery was a thing, but today in 2020 America.
It's not at all an obstacle to black Americans today. It is just, there's no...
Yeah. See, she is grift. She is the grift queen, dude. She made a good penny off this lifestyle, off this career.
Systemic racism. There is no law. There is nothing that says that I can't do something as a black person that you
It's not explicit bias anymore. It's not a person screaming the N-word. It's not any more text in law that says black people cannot attend this school. The bias is implicit. The bias is things you can't see, like the stuff I laid out, like all these impoverished communities that black Americans are in. Look up the poverty rate for black Americans. If you look up poverty rate by race in America, I know what the numbers are. Oh, crap. I went past it. But the numbers are 9% of whites are in poverty, and or 9% of whites start off in poverty. 28% of blacks start off in poverty. 9% of whites start off in poverty. 28% of blacks. 28% of Hispanics start off in poverty. The numbers for Asian Americans are very, very low when it comes to poverty, because the only Asian Americans here typically are ones who are here based on wealth, because you don't usually get here from some place in Asia unless if you have enough money to actually immigrate here.
Can do. So it's completely false. What we're really talking about is the fact that people want to absolve themselves of personal responsibility, and we're being helped. If there's anything
it's all personal responsibility. It's no systems. It's all just work harder. Just work harder, dude. Just move out of the communities. It's so easy. Just move and just work harder. Although if you try to work harder, you try to get a job. Say you're lucky enough to find a job that's even hiring. There's many studies done that white people with felonies get jobs at a higher rate than black people without felonies do. This study was out of Milwaukee. And there are many studies that suggest that around the entire country. It's hard to find a job if you're black. Just simply your name being something like Jaquan or Jamal is going to hurt your chances to get a job. Black people with more white names like Adam will get a job at a higher rate over black people that have black names. And this goes throughout all this racial bias, even in hiring for jobs. So how do you tell people to just rise from that? So get a job, move. You can't move if you don't have a job. If you try to get a job, they're not going to hire you because you have a black name. And a white person with a felony is going to get hired over you. Oh, it's all personal responsibility, huh? So we could ignore all behavioral science. We could ignore environmental factors. And she could dumb it down to nothing. So Americans don't have to deal with a racist history. And we don't actually have to heal generational difficulties for Black Americans that we put on them.
That's systemic in America today. It's white guilt, and that's the biggest problem that we have in America today. Is white guilt. It's been institutionalized.
The biggest problem we have in America right now today is white guilt. The feelsies of white people. White people being sad is our biggest issue right now. White people being sad. That's our biggest issue. Telling a white person they have white privilege is basically lynching them. Biggest issue ever. White people being upset that they actually have to think is the biggest issue.
It's been politicized, politicians, white people feeling bad for themselves, and therefore allowing people, allowing Black people and white people alike, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, to run around and act like toddlers, right? So there's an emotional immaturity.
Act like toddlers. Oh, yes.
That is happening in Black America, and it's spawned from the education system, which shapes you from the time that you are in kindergarten to believe that because you're Black, you can't in America. When you keep telling a child...
Oh my God, this is what they always do. With so many things. You say you want police reform, you hate the police. You say you want to lower the military budget, you hate our troops. You say you want to you say you want to heal generational slights and help Black Americans so they start off at an equal level to white Americans. Wow, you think Black Americans simply can't work that hard.
Over and over again, they can't because they won't. Right? They will begin to believe in their own futility.
So she is saying that there's environmental factors within the school, so you just tell them they can't, and if every Black American just believed they could achieve, everything would be fixed. Now, this is not to say that at the individual level you should not teach hard work. You need to attack it from both sides. You need to say we need to fix systems, but also within this unfair world, you must be willing to work as hard as possible. So you need to be winning at both, yes, capitalism and socialism at the same time. You need to attack it from every angle.
This is the thing that I try to conquer, right? I try to go out there and I try to speak and I try to say the problem. If you want to talk about anything systemic, it's that white people keep allowing this false narrative to be perpetuated and won't allow Black Americans to get up onto their own 2 feet. And that really stems from, I would say,
man, I can't accomplish anything because I'm Black. I was taught in high school that I'm Black, so I can't. No. Black Americans are hurt by the fact they grow up in impoverished communities, schools that aren't funded. If you have a kid who is Black, every Black parent has to go through this. They have to tell their kid to wash themselves around the police, to wash themselves around old white people when they're walking through town. They have to have this conversation with every Black child in America that white parents never have to give to their kids. No matter if you are rich or if you're poor, you're always going to be Black. Countless stories of NBA players being stopped by the police for no reason. Countless stories of successful Black businessmen being stopped by the police for no reason. No matter what, you're always going to be Black in America. And that's more of an explicit form of racism. But it all feeds into each other. And this argument she's using right now is complete bullshit. She knows it's bullshit. She never shows any emotion. She's not invested in any of these positions. Her pocketbook, her wallet is going to be so fat. It's already so fat, and her billionaire donors are going to keep on supplying the money, so she could tell white people everything is okay, and they should listen to her because she is a good one.
The mid-1960s, where Black America sort of took a shift away from the peaceful civil rights into this more, hardcore, militant Black civil rights of burning down your neighborhoods and looting and rioting.
What happened to rioting being the language of the oppressor? What happened to... She does understand that in the 60s, what Black Americans had to overcome and how difficult of a process that was and how long and hard of a process that was. She is just completely ignoring it. She's like, well, they were peaceful. MLK, all that happened was he just marched one day and everyone just sang Kumbaya. And then we all shook hands and we danced and we all listened to the same music, and then racism was over. But these crazy Blacks just had to start burning their own communities down. I don't understand it. Because obviously what she's getting at with this entire thing, it's not the system's fault. It's not the environment's fault. It's Black people's fault. And it's white people's fault for telling Black people that they can't achieve things. See how it's all individual? That's how the conservative mind works. They look at everything as an individual issue. Work harder. If you need to get something like healthcare, that's a privilege. Simply work for it. That's why they're so against collectivism. Although when you break it down, they know it's the right answer when it comes to data like healthcare, for example, like Social Security, like unionizing. They don't understand that is collectivism because they would rather look at it at the individual level. And they use that mentality. Politicians use that mentality to disencourage workers and the working class to join together because they're all individuals. They're all little capitalists. They might be millionaires tomorrow.
because they didn't want to take steps to be personally responsible.
What do you make of the argument, and I know that you cover it some in your book Blackout, the argument that was made by LBJ and still made by Democrats today, that one of the big problems is that historic racism is built into the system such that people are starting from behind the eight ball. That
Literally, yes.
if you look at the broad history of the United States, that black Americans were discriminated against for the vast majority of America's history, really only alleviated legally in the 1960s and 1970s, and even beyond then, there were informal structures of racism, and therefore that black Americans are starting off inherently behind sort of the starting line.
Yes, precisely.
LBJ suggested, for example, that it would not be proper to simply remove all barriers to entry. You're still leaving people who are so far behind that they can never catch up and more conservative on these issues.
You don't just heal things by stopping the damage. You have to actually fix things. You can't just put a boat in the ocean that has holes in it and expect it to float. Of course, some people throughout the system, some individuals can break out and be successful. But even those people, like rap artists, like NBA players, they tell them to shut up and dribble, shut up and make music. Or they say their music is some type of tribal music that's telling black people to be violent.
And LBJ suggested, for example, that it would not be proper to simply remove all barriers to entry. You're still leaving people who are so far behind that they can never catch up, and that just wouldn't be appropriate to say, okay, now you're free to live your lives when they've already been systematically deprived of resources that other people have had in the United States.
Look, nobody will debate the fact that black Americans were oppressed in America for a long time. The problem is that, and you're talking about LBJ's Howard University speech, where he said, we need to fix this, fair. We need to give black people full freedom. We're getting rid of Jim Crow, great, all of these things. And then he did the worst thing ever, which is he assigned white guilt to everybody and said, but it's not enough to just give them their freedom.
Ha ha. We took the knife out. Now you must all feel bad. You are white. Feel bad about it.
We all have to get involved, and we have to do this and we have to do that. What I can say to you is that
we all have to get involved to help fix the problem. Yes, it's simple. I mean, you could look at this at an elementary level. This is a very simple concept, actually.
There is no group that has ever lagged behind another group that has gotten ahead with handouts. You have to, at some point, do the hard work, right? So let's say I've been illiterate because I grew up in a black America where I wasn't allowed to read. I'm not going to learn to read by you pretending I can read. Eventually, I'm going to have to learn to read myself. And this is sort of when all of these programs that are meant to instill equality, which are fundamentally racist in and of themselves, right? Like allowing more black people to get into schools, which hurts black America. These affirmative action practices, which was started
Actually, affirmative action, just on that topic, evens things out, because when you take into account environmental factors, like I said, 29% of black people start off in poverty versus 9% of white people. Affirmative action actually makes things more equal because they go to schools where they don't have good SAT testing, they don't have good SAT tutoring. So affirmative action makes things very equal when you look at it. People say it's some type of drastic anti-white thing, but it's not. Or they say it's an anti-Asian. It's not. It's healing systemic issues, and it's working quite well, actually. I mean, when I had a very childish understanding of affirmative action a couple years ago, before I actually read into things and did studying, I looked into the actual outcomes of things. I thought it was a bad program because it didn't make sense to me. But once I started to think like an adult and think through it, I'm like, okay, affirmative action does make sense when you look at every simple indicator.
By LBJ in this initiative for white people to feel guilty enough to just allow black people.
It's not about guilt. I know I actually disagree with a lot of people on the left because they do use the word white privilege too much. I think it's a very bad, like the left, they're bad at messaging, defund the police, white privilege. There is a lot of instances where white privilege should be used, but I think it's overused to the point where you're not supposed to tell, or you shouldn't tell a working class person to feel white guilt. It doesn't work. MLK was all about uniting all of the working class in a common struggle against all systems of oppression. And through classism, he was able to show people a better understanding of racism. And I think saying white privilege too much separates a lot of people that could be working together to dismantle some of the systemic systems of oppression that harm them both. And I think once you attack both of those, then a lot more white Americans will see the difficulties presented to black Americans.
To be given accolades and scholarships that they don't deserve, it has harmed black America over time because at the end of the day, the information.
Okay, so she says don't deserve, but as I pointed out, it's not about don't deserve. It's about giving people the opportunity that they never had before that. It's about letting more black people into these colleges, and it's not letting them. But if you get me a person from a school in, I'll just use a stereotypical one. But if you get me a black person from a school in Compton, in a really impoverished community, and he has a 3.4 GPA, or you know what, and he has a 3.0 GPA, and you get me a white person from Beverly Hills or a white person from a really nice suburb with a 4.0 GPA, I guarantee you, I'll bet any money, that black person with a 3.0 GPA, and you could say any poor people with a 3.0 GPA from a poor area, guarantee that person worked harder than the white kid from Beverly Hills. Guarantee the person worked harder. But they'll never assign those topics to hard work. They say, oh, they didn't deserve it. He had lower SAT scores. He should have studied harder. They ignore all the actual reality that is present.
Or you don't. You can do it or you cannot. And here's a great example. Look at the areas in which black Americans actually excel in. What are the areas we excel in? Sports, right? Did LeBron James become LeBron James because every time he scored a basket, we pretended it was 4 points?
Dude, this is such a deductive and stupid form of reasoning. It's the giving participation trophies thing. Holy crap.
Of course he didn't. He did it because he did the hard work. He went after school every day, whatever it was. He practiced his game, and LeBron James became LeBron James because he did the work and he put in the work.
So how about you can't expect people to win a basketball game starting the game off 30 points down?
Areas that we excel in, disprove the idea that the areas that we lag behind, we're going to get ahead by somehow.
Yes. LeBron James being good at basketball directly correlates with the outcomes systemically for black Americans.
Just being given handouts. We have to do the work.
This is a point Shelby Steele has made specifically with regard to basketball, suggesting that you don't say to a kid who's unable to dribble, well, if we give you this handout or that handout, you're going to learn to dribble. We say, okay, now you need to learn to dribble.
No one says black people are incapable. We just recognize it's harder to be black in America than it is to be white on average.
Right.
And that is the only way that anybody gets ahead of any color or in any point in American life. So how did you personally make the transition?
This guy is such a freaking grifter. He started off rich. His family's rich. He went to college for him and his sister went to college for opera singing or some shit. He was a theater boy, and he goes through talking on the internet like he's some type of hardworking, working class Chad, when he's really just a pretty boy that sits behind a screen and justifies a bunch of people's stupid habits and stupid thoughts.
You didn't always believe this stuff. In fact, when would you say that you became more conservative on these issues?
What's actually funny is that I've always been conservative. I just didn't know that I was a conservative. And I think this is what a lot of black Americans suffer from. We're raised quite conservatively. And I was definitely raised staunchly conservatively in my grandfather's household. But I didn't care about politics. I was ignorant about politics. So I went through the public school system. And if you come out of the public school system out the other side.
You can be conservative without being stupid. You could have a more conservative mindset fiscally. You could say we should focus more on hard work and not give participation trophies, which no participation trophies are given to black people. We don't just say, hey, look, black person did good. Put them on a pedestal. That's what some neoliberals do. But people who actually care about the topic never do anything like that.
And you actually learn. If you actually study, you walk out, you get your degree, and you know what? Republicans are racist, conservatives are racist, and at every point that we've ever gotten ahead, it's because of Democrats. Even LBJ. It's amazing. They make it seem like he was this wonderful president for black America because he signed the Civil Rights Act in 1964. He was forced to sign it in 1964. He stepped in and became president because JFK got killed, and there were massive riots all around. The entire time he was in Senate, for 20 years, he voted.
Wait a second. Is Candace Owens endorsing riots as a method for change? LBJ had to sign it because of riots? Oh, thank you for joining the resistance.
Against every initiative to help black Americans. He was a staunch racist. He used the N-word all the time, when he was in the White House, and yet they've rewritten history.
Hey, man. Personal opinion, I would rather a politician say the N-word and sign the Civil Rights Act than not say the N-word and propagate Jim Crow. And I think many black Americans will agree with that.
And it's disappeared. So we learned that LBJ was a hero. So I wasn't politically inclined at all. I had never voted. But if you had asked me, you stopped me on the street and you said, are you a Democrat or Republican? I would have said Democrat. And it would have been because of the reasons that I just listed. So I started paying attention in politics when Donald Trump came down the escalator, and which is quite hilariously because I thought this man should never be the president of the United States ever, right? So I don't care where you were in America. I was on your side with this. No, not this guy. I thought that he was just too boisterous, too New York. And also he was the guy who says you're fired.
Yes, Trump should not be president because he's too boisterous, to New York, and he says you're fired.
Cultural to be the president of the United States. I didn't believe that he was the right person for the job, especially coming off of Obama, the smooth talker. But then something weird started happening where this guy who I thought should not be the president of the United States, rather than saying he shouldn't be the president of the United States because he's not qualified, the media started saying he shouldn't be the president of the United States because he's a racist, a sexist, a homophobe.
You literally just, you.
I'm thinking, wait a second. This guy has been loved, in the media. They loved this guy. In every hip hop song I listened to growing up, they wanted to be like Trump. You want to end up at Mar-a-Lago. He was a symbol of status and of wealth. So I asked myself an important question.
Yes, she is going to say later why hip hop is one of the worst things for the black community, and also say how people in hip hop use Donald Trump as a signal or a symbol of wealth because he is a billionaire. and he represented that class. But we know Donald Trump's racist history. You could look back at any tape talking about Trump. People knew what the deal was. I mean, you could say he had some relationships with black people because they were also famous and rich, but don't play these games.
Question was, is it plausible that black Americans are now being, and racism is being used as a theme?
You could have black friends and be very, very, very racist, by the way. You could have black friends and not support actually fixing anything. You could have black friends and do everything to worsen those black friends and black people's lives. It's very possible.
To turn black Americans into single issue voters? And the answer is yes. And I started researching, and I fell in love with Thomas Sowell. I mean, it really was a story of falling in love with Thomas Sowell and his books, and he knocked me into reality. And you really can't unsee it. You can't unsee it once you learn the knowledge of how we've been used as single issue voters. You can't unsee it.
So Republicans have been struggling, obviously, for decades to try and make inroads in the black community. Shockingly, some of the polls show that Trump is actually making some inroads in the black community, which is a complete, obviously, surprise.
Yep, because neoliberals don't know what they're doing, and they don't care to know what they're doing because they would rather manipulate groups of people than actually fix anything, and that's why it leads to fascism.
To many of the pollsters and to many in the mainstream media. What do you think is the best way for Republicans to speak to members of the black community? Because it seems that they've tried a bunch of different angles. All of them seem to fail. Many of them seem to be very apologetic in tone. There's this feeling like, okay, we have to make excuses.
Honestly, they shouldn't do anything because if they try to, they come off as very racist. So all they have to do is let the Democrats keep on being disappointing, and I think enough black voters will go Republican just because they don't want to be sheep and be victims. Although, most, if not all, of the most prominent civil rights leaders in American history were socialists. You could say, like the Nation of Islam were more black nationalists, but they all, they were none of them would ever side with the Republicans. And I'm not going to say that's that would say where black Americans should vote for, but I think the Republicans just should shut up and let the Democrats fail.
Is for what we are saying. It's always seemed to me that if you talk to black people the same way you talk to everybody else, because black people are like everybody else, that seems like the best way to do it. But
right.
But I think you have more expertise on this than I do.
Yeah.
So how should Republicans talk to members of the black?
I think we should talk to black people like everyone because black people are people like everyone else. But I think you might have the inside scoop for some reason.
Black community.
So what I've noticed with Republicans is that they're suffering from PTSD. You guys get called racist so much that you're fearful, right? And I'm saying you guys, I'm kind of looping you into all of this, but
just don't be afraid of being called racist.
They're fearful to say anything, even if it's true. Everyone kind of tiptoes out. I always describe it as like the scene in The Wizard of...
What she means by true is black people need to stop killing black people. That's the real issue in America. If you blacks just stop being black, you could stop being shot and stuff.
And the munchkins come out, like, even though your instincts, you're like, George Floyd, this doesn't sound right. Republicans will wait and wait until somebody else says it first because you've been called racist for absolutely nothing for years. And the reason why Trump was able to make inroads is because he's rude, right? And
absolutely nothing. As Donald Trump puts on Twitter, watch out, white people. The suburbs are going to be overran soon. The suburbs, watch out, white people in the suburbs, watch out. Wow, yeah, that's probably one of the truest forms of systemic racism, actually.
Here's the thing. Black America needed someone cultural. They needed someone who didn't care, who wasn't going to apologize, who was going to say what he meant and not apologize for it because it was simply true. When he gave that infamous speech and said, Black America, what do you have to lose? And he listed all of these ways that Black American communities are suffering. And the media calls him a racist. He never apologized for it. He never said, I could have said that better, or, I should have been more sensitive. He simply said it and he left it there. And that should be a call to action for all Republicans. Don't apologize. If it's true, it's true. If you haven't been called racist yet in 2020, you haven't lived. I've been called racist, I've been called anti-Black. So I think that
she is very anti-Black and very racist. Like, yeah, they're right. Whoever's saying that is very right.
Is the most important lesson is just be courageous because at the end of the day, silence.
Tell you what though, being black and going and being part of conservative media is a good way to make some money.
Is not winning us. What I always say about the right, which is really interesting, is that the right is playing by rules that were established by the left, and the left is playing by no rules, right? We have to start fighting. And I worry that there's not enough voices that are willing to just simply say the truth, let it linger, and not worry about the names that they're being called.
So speaking of having courage to step into waters where angels fear to tread, you obviously cut this video in the aftermath of George Floyd death in which you went through specifically his criminal record. And you talked about not really the situation surrounding George Floyd's death, which now as it turns out, new details suggest it's a lot more complex than the original narrative. You talked specifically about the attempts to elevate George Floyd into a sort of moral paragon, which obviously is something that
no one says he's a moral figure. No one says he's a moral figure. They just know he's a black guy that the police saw as a black guy who got killed wrongly by the police. That's the issue. It's never about who that person is. It doesn't matter if that person is a serial killer. If the police don't know that, the police saw a black guy and killed him. They came up to his car. They got a call, for one, that someone may have forged or handed in a fraud $20 bill. They got that call. So their reaction is to go outside the store that called them, all holding and brandishing pistols directly at the driver, walk up to the car and rip that driver out. Rip him out of the car. And people are like, why is he panicking? Are you kidding me? If the police, and we have no idea if George Floyd knew that was counterfeit, what he handed in to the store. But imagine being in your car after buying something for your kid or something. You go into your driver's seat. You look outside. There's 4 cops outside the door pointing guns at you. And you have, he was high. That is true. But even if he's not high, there's a complete chance that a normal functioning person will have a panic attack in that situation. People are saying about cops, how can they handle themselves in such crazy situations? How can they maintain composure and not freak out and shoot somebody? These trained people who are elected, who are not elected, my bad. These trained people who are supposed to maintain law and order and respond to crisis and protect property. These people, they make mistakes. But apparently, if you're a random guy in a car and 4 officers show up with their guns pointed at you, you're supposed to be cool and calm. You see the double standard here. The double standard, and we know that there is a big disproportionate effect on the black community and black Americans. The threshold for when police are going to shoot for white people versus black people is so drastically different. If you're black and you get stopped by the police, I would expect to be harmed in some way versus if you're white. At a much higher rate, if you're black and stopped by the police, will you be harmed than if you're white. The threshold for engaging in violence, engaging in lethal force is so much less for black Americans.
Culture has done, it's what the media have done, and you see this fairly routinely, is the attempt to suggest that people who, at the very best, until the moment they were shot by police, had led difficult lives, are in fact people who ought to be emulated, or...
That's not the point. He was no angel misses the point completely. Saying he was no angel. He wasn't a very good guy. I heard he threw a bottle outside his car. He littered. He littered once. That pretty much justifies the cops killing him. Although the cops had no idea who this person was. Who this person even was before they did what they did. It's just bad policing. Bad policing and bad training plus the racial bias. Because you see the mishandling situations with white people too. When you look at police training for America versus police training in Norway or police training even in the UK or France, if you look at the differences, police training here is like a community college versus getting a master's degree over there.
Who are free of any moral stain. We're seeing it more recently with Jacob Blake, who's being elevated into a loving father of 3, as opposed to a person who had an open warrant for both domestic violence and sexual assault in the 3rd degree, and who resisted arrest. So what prompted you to make that statement, and why do you think so many people in the media have been willing to simply cover up the reality of who criminal suspects are in interactions with the police?
When I started looking into who he was, and I had no question he was going to have a rap sheet, I knew obviously the police did not stop this man for no reason, and I knew that it couldn't have escalated that situation unless he somehow was resisting arrest, despite having no knowledge of that. When I did look into him and I found his rap sheet, and I'm sitting here thinking that they've elevated him to such a level that they're burying him in a gold casket. Like a gold casket. Dr. Ben Carson will not be buried in a gold casket. Larry Elder will not be buried in a gold casket. All of these...
Ben Carson was her example.
Condoleezza Rice will not be buried in a gold casket. But this person who spent nine prison and jail stints, which is remarkable, actually. If there's any record, Guinness Book of Records, look at that. 9 prison and jail stints before you turn 40 is actually the most impressive thing he's ever done in his entire life. Elevated, and you have little black kids that are wearing shirts, murals being painted of him, calling him a hero.
No one's calling him a hero. And for those who are, they're saying it in the sense that he is the victim of, a systemic issue and state violence. They're not saying he's someone to be replicated. They're saying he's somebody that could be used as a person caught up in this situation. Like, I watched a video on this channel. The cop saw him calmly walk around his car, pulling on his shirt. Like, the moves they use to try and take down people, these cops, are equivalent, and I would say even worse, than what you'd find in a fight at high school, in a high school cafeteria. No, like, do they have any training?
President Joe Biden saying that they're going to speak at his funeral. This is crazy, and it's indicative of...
And this isn't an issue with all cops. I'm sure a small department like somewhere in central Pennsylvania or, where I am, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, these departments do not have the same issues. But when you're talking about militarized police forces, then it is a big issue. And even around here, guess what? Black people are profiled and stopped at a much higher rate than white people. If you talk to a black person in a 99% white area, there's a good chance that 100% of them were stopped. Maybe asked like, hey, nice car, where do you get that car from? Or a question of the sort.
Of where we're at in Black culture, where this is what we constantly do. We elevate people that should not be elevated, and we downgrade people that should be elevated, right? So Condoleezza Rice, Uncle Tom. Larry Elder, coon. Dr. Ben Carson, stupid. That's my favorite one. A literal neuro.
Dr. Ben Carson really is, either he's a stupid, like, he's a dummy. You could be really good at something and still be stupid, by the way. You could be a great artist and be stupid. You could be a neuroscience and be a neuroscientist or a neurodoctor, a neurologist, whatever the hell it's called, a neurosurgeon, and be stupid with everything else in life. There's a reason we have specialized things that people do in our economy. You're really good at that one thing. It doesn't mean you're a smart overall person. That's why I hate when people who have like a doctorate in psychology come and talk on COVID as if they're a real doctor, because they could still use the prefix or whatever, doctor, before they talk.
Neurosurgeon is stupid, right? And this is a problem with Black culture. And until we have the courage to go into it and say this is wrong, you can disagree with whether or not Derek Chauvin should be have been on his neck for that long, and disregard the fact that he was high on fentanyl and high on methamphetamine in his system at the time of the
Nothing about that has to do with the tactics used by the police.
arrest. But you should also disagree with elevating this person to the level of a hero. And I just felt it was weighing on me for days, just watching people spin this man into a hero. And I said, I have to say something because this is a lie. And I don't care about the peer pressure. I don't care.
By the way, look up Candace Owens, George Floyd, and tell me the emotion on her face is genuine. Tell me the emotion on her face when she starts this video. Candace Owens, George Floyd. Where is it? Tell me the emotion in this video.
Hello, Facebook family. I have decided to do this video. It has been weighing very heavily on my heart.
Look at that.
And
hi, Facebook family. I have decided to do this video. It has been weighing on my heart.
on my mind as well.
And
it was something that I wanted to say early on, but there were so many emotions and so much pressure for me to go with the popular opinion about who George Floyd was. And sometimes it can be difficult.
I really had to do this. It was weighing on me. I'm really upset that people were not calling George Floyd a disgusting piece of shit. I'm really upset. It's been weighing on me that George Floyd people are mad that he died when he deserved to. I'm very, like, are you kidding me? Are you gonna tell me that this is a genuine take? Like, come on, dude.
About, you should just be quiet because let his family grieve. A 4-day funeral. I mean, none of us, we're never going to get that. None of us are going to get that.
Wow, no one else got that funeral of 4 days. Oh my God, we have to make this a big issue. Oh, these white people are too concerned about their feelsies. Oh no, the black people want us to be mad or sad, or the Democrats want us to be sad. But you know what? I want us to be mad about the funeral being too long. This big groundbreaking cultural event. I want this entire generational civil rights movement to be disavowed because the funeral was too long. No one else is going to get that. Dr. Ben Carson is not going to get that. He should. He's a civil rights hero.